I'm Lena, born and raised in a sleepy Ohio town called Millwood. My boyfriend Derek left a mark on my wrist last month, a purple smudge that looked like a fingerprint pressed too hard into clay. I covered it with a long-sleeve shirt, went to my shift at the diner, and smiled like nothing was wrong. My mom saw it when I stopped by her place for Sunday dinner. She frowned, asked if I'd caught it on something at work. I said yeah, because the truth felt too heavy to drop. Derek didn't say sorry. He just shrugged, said I should watch where I'm going. That night, I stood in my apartment staring at the TV flickering with static, wondering when I'd stopped. Recognizing myself. Have you ever swallowed your words to keep things calm, only to feel them choke you later? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. What time is it where you are? Would you have spoken up or let the silence win? If this story hits you, give it a like or subscribe. It helps this little tale find others who get it. The TVs was the only sound in the room, a low buzz that filled the cracks in my thoughts. I sat on the couch, knees tucked under me, a mug of chamomile tea gone cold on the coffee table. My phone lit up with a text from my best friend, Sarah. You good? You were quiet at the diner today. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to type, I'm drowning. But instead, I set the phone down and pulled my sleeve over the bruise. Silence was easier. It always had been. The front door creaked, and my body tensed, not out of fear, just reflex. Derek walked in, his work boots thudding on the hardwood, bringing the smell of engine grease and cheap whiskey. He didn't look at me, just tossed his keys on the counter with a clatter. No dinner? He asked, voice flat, like he already
knew the answer.
I shook my head, eyes on the TV. He snorted, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and dropped into the recliner. The springs groaned under his weight like they were as fed up as I was. I stood, slow and quiet, and slipped into the kitchen. My hands moved on autopilot, opening a drawer where I'd kept a small spiral notebook, the kind you'd use for grocery lists. I'd started writing in it a few weeks ago, after the first time Derek grabbed me hard enough to leave a mark. July 15th. You're lucky I put up with you. July 22nd. Stop acting like you're better than me. I didn't write tonight's words yet. I just held the pen, staring at the blank page, my wrist throbbing under the sleeve. Derek's voice cut through the quiet. What are you scribbling? One of your little poems.
He laughed, sharp and mean, like he was daring me to answer.
I closed the notebook, slid it back into the drawer. Nothing, I said, voice barely above a whisper. He turned up the TV, some reality show with shouting contestants and fake drama. I sat back on the couch, curling into myself, the bruise pulsing like a second heartbeat. An hour later, he was out cold, head lolled back, the beer bottle tipped against his chest. I stood, careful not to let the floor creak, and stepped onto the balcony. The air was sharp, late summer turning to fall, carrying the faint scent of cut grass from the neighbor's yard. I pulled out my phone and typed a text to Sarah. Can we meet tomorrow? Need to talk? I hit send before I could overthink it. No reply came, but I didn't expect one this late. I leaned against the railing, watching the streetlights flicker below, their glow soft against the dark. I'm still here, I whispered to no one, the words dissolving into the night. The next morning, I met Sarah at Millie's diner, a greasy spoon off Route 17 where the coffee was strong and the booths were sticky. She was already there, nursing a mug, her nurse's scrubs peeking out under her denim jacket. Her hair was in a messy bun, and her eyes locked on mine as I slid into the booth. Show me, she said. No hello, no small talk. I hesitated, then pushed up my sleeve. The bruise was darker now, a muddy purple with edges fading to yellow. Her lips pressed into a thin line. How long? I stared at my coffee, the steam curling like a ghost. A few months, I said. It's not every day, he's just stressed. Work's been rough and… Lena, she interrupted, her voice soft but firm. Don't make excuses for him. I swallowed, my throat tight. She reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. You don't have to stay. You know that, right? I nodded, but it felt like a lie. Leaving sounded simple, but it was like trying to untangle roots from a tree that's been growing too long. We ate in silence after that, the clink of forks and the hum of the jukebox filling the space. Before we left, she handed me a card with a hotline number scribbled on it. "Just in case," she said. I tucked it into my wallet next to a faded photo of me and Mom at the fair, back when I was. All braces and hope. Back at the apartment, Derek was gone, but his presence lingered in the empty beer cans and the dent in the recliner. I opened my notebook, added last night's words, August 28th, "You're too weak to handle me." I snapped a photo of my wrist with my phone, the flash making the bruise look worse than it felt. I saved it in a hidden folder labeled Notes, a name so boring no one would bother checking. That afternoon, I drove to the Millwood Library, a low brick building with creaky floors and free Wi-Fi. I found a corner computer, opened a private browser, and typed "How to Leave an Abusive Relationship." The screen filled with links, shelters, legal advice, safety plans. I clicked on one about documenting abuse. Keep a record, photos, texts, dates. It's your proof when no one believes you. I bookmarked it, logged out, and drove home, my chest tight with something that wasn't quite hope but wasn't despair either. That night, Derek came home late, his eyes bloodshot, his voice slurred. "You're so useless, Lena," he said, leaning against the counter. "Why do I even keep you around?" I didn't answer, just kept my eyes on the TV. He ranted for a while, then passed out in the recliner. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and let it capture his snores, his muttered curses. It wasn't much, but it was something. I saved the file, labeled it August 29th, and tucked the phone away. The next few days were quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like the air before a storm. Derek was homeless, working overtime at the garage, or so he said. I used the time to plan. I started hiding cash in a sock at the bottom of my dresser, $10 here, 20 there, scraped from tips at the diner. I looked up apartments online. Small places outside Millwood, far enough that he wouldn't find me easily. I didn't tell Sarah yet. I wasn't ready to make it real, but the notebook grew heavier. I wrote down every word, every shove, every time he made me feel smaller than I was. August 30th. You're nothing without me. September 2nd. Don't test me, Lena. Each entry was a stone, building something I couldn't yet name. I took more photos, hid them in my folder, and started emailing them to a burner account I'd set up. Just in case. One night, Sarah called. You haven't texted back, she said. What's going on? I told her about the notebook, the photos, the plan forming in my head. Her voice softened. You're stronger than you think, Lena, but you need to move soon. He's not going to change. I knew she was right, but knowing and doing were two different things. I hung up, opened the notebook, and wrote, I'm scared, but I'm not invisible. It felt like a vow, small but solid, like a seed planted in cracked soil. The fluorescent lights in Sarah's apartment buzzed faintly, like they were whispering secrets to the potted plants crowding every corner.
It was a Saturday a week after
our diner meetup, and I sat cross-legged on her couch, clutching a mug of peppermint tea she'd made to calm my nerves. The bruise on my wrist had faded to a sickly yellow, but I could still feel its shape, like a ghost under my skin. Sarah sat across from me, her nurse's scrubs swapped for a worn sweatshirt, her eyes steady but soft. You've got to make a move, Lena, she said, sliding a thin folder across the coffee table. This is from my friend, Tara, the lawyer. It's what you need for a restraining order. I stared at the folder, its edges crisp, like it held answers I wasn't sure I was ready for. What's in it? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Forms, a checklist, steps to document everything. Photos, text, dates. It's not just for you, it's for the court to believe you. I nodded, flipping it open. Inside were blank forms, a printed guide titled Protective Orders, Ohio Law, and a sticky note in Sarah's handwriting. You're doing this for you. Not him. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with the weight of what I was starting to build. Back at my apartment, Derek was at the garage, or so he'd said. The place felt emptier without him, but not safer. His boots by the door, the half-empty beer cans on the counter, they were like footprints of a storm that hadn't passed yet. I sat at the kitchen table, my notebook open, pen in hand. I added last night's entry, September 5th. You're too sensitive, Lena. Grow up.
He'd said it after I asked him to stop yelling about a late bill.
I recorded it too, my phone hidden in my pocket, capturing his voice like a trap snapping shut. I saved the file in my notes folder, emailed it to my burner account, and deleted it from my phone. Just in case, I opened Tara's folder and read the checklist. Document incidents with dates and details. Take photos of injuries. Save threatening texts or voicemails. Keep a timeline. It was straightforward, like following a recipe, but each step felt like carving a piece of myself out to display. I pulled up the photos on my laptop, the bruise from August. Another from July when he grabbed my shoulder too hard, leaving fingerprints like a brand. I printed them at the library the next day, using their clunky old printer, and tucked them into the folder. Each photo felt like a confession, but also a shield. On Monday, I called a rental agency from the library's payphone, my hands sweaty. On the receiver, I'd found a listing online for a studio apartment in Crestview, a town 30 miles east of Millwood. It was small, just a single room with a kitchenette, but it had a deadbolt and no neighbors sharing walls. Can you hold it under a friend's name? I asked the agent, glancing over my shoulder like Derek might appear in the quiet stacks. She agreed, and I gave her Sarah's name. I wired the deposit from my secret savings, $300 from diner tips I'd stashed in a coffee can under my bed. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Back home, I started packing in secret. A few shirts, a pair of jeans, my favorite sweater, all folded into a duffel bag I hid under the bed. I wiped my laptop's search history, set up a new password, and bought a burner phone from a gas station, a cheap flip model with no apps, just calls and texts. I saved Sarah's number in it, labeled her S, and hid it in a sock drawer. Every move was small, deliberate, like laying bricks for a wall I wasn't sure I'd climb over yet. Derek noticed something was off. "You're acting weird," he said one night, leaning against the fridge, his eyes narrowing. He'd come home late, smelling of whiskey and motor oil, his hands restless. "What's with the quiet act?" I shrugged, stirring a pot of pasta I hadn't eaten. "Just tired," I said, keeping my voice even. He stared at me like he was trying to crack a code, then grabbed another beer and slumped into the recliner. I waited until he was snoring, then recorded him muttering about how I'd never make it without him. I saved it, emailed it, deleted it. The routine was becoming muscle memory. The next day, I met Sarah at her place again. She'd made soup, the kind with too many vegetables, and we sat at her tiny kitchen table, bowls steaming between us. "You're doing it, aren't you?" she asked, her spoon pausing mid-air. I nodded, pulling out the notebook. I showed her the entries, the photos, the timeline I'd started typing up. She scanned it, her face a mix of pride and worry. "This is good, Lena, really good. But you need a safe place to land. My couch is open if you need it." I shook my head. "I found a place, Crestview. It's not much, but it's mine." Her eyes softened, and she reached for my hand. "You're braver than you know." I didn't feel brave. I felt like a kid playing hide and seek, hoping the seeker would give up before finding me. But I squeezed her hand back, and for a moment I believed her. That night, I drove to Crestview to see the apartment. The agent met me at a gas station nearby, handed me the keys, and drove me to a low brick building with peeling paint. The studio was bare linoleum floors, a single window, a mattress in the corner, but it felt like a blank page. I signed the lease as Lena Marie, my middle name a quiet rebellion. The agent didn't ask questions, just wished me luck. I stood in the empty room after she left, imagining a life where I didn't flinch at footsteps. Back in Millwood, I kept up the act. Smiling at Derek, cooking dinner, nodding when he ranted about work or money. But inside, I was counting days, not hours. I added to my notebook, September 8th. "You're not going anywhere, Lena. You need me." I recorded him yelling about a lost socket wrench, his voice shaking the thin walls. I hid the burner phone in a different drawer, behind old receipts. I started moving more cash, $50 at a time, into the coffee can. It wasn't enough for a new life, but it was enough to start one. One evening, Sarah texted the burner phone. "Tara says you're ready to file whenever you are. Just say the word." I stared at the message, my thumb tracing the phone's cracked plastic. Filing meant making it real, telling a judge, a clerk, maybe a cop, that I wasn't imagining this. It meant Derek would know. I typed back, soon, not yet. She didn't push, just sent a heart emoji. That was enough. The next night, Derek came home in a mood, his eyes dark, his hands twitching. "You're hiding something," he said, standing too close in the kitchen. I kept my back to him, washing dishes, the water scalding my hands. "I'm not," I said, my voice steady. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to make me freeze. "Don't lie to me, Lena." I pulled away, turned to face him. "I'm not lying," I said, meeting his eyes.
He blinked, surprised, and stepped back. I didn't record it.
"I didn't need to." That moment was mine. I went to bed early, locking the bedroom door for the first time in months. Derek didn't knock, didn't yell, just let the TV blare until he passed out. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the notebook under my pillow. I whispered to myself, "You're not his." It wasn't loud, but it was true. And truth, I was learning. Didn't need to shout to be heard. The Crestview studio smelled like fresh paint and old carpet, a mix that clung to the back of my throat as I stood in the empty room. It was mid-September, 2 weeks after I'd signed the lease under Sarah's name, and I'd driven out here alone to drop off a box of essentials, a kettle, a blanket, a few dishes I'd bought at a thrift store. The single window let in a slice of gray light, and the deadbolt clicked solidly when I tested it. This place wasn't home yet, but it was a promise, a life where I didn't have to tiptoe around Derek's moods. I set the box on the counter, my hands lingering on the cardboard. "You're almost there," I whispered, the words echoing in the bare space back in Millwood. The apartment I still shared with Derek felt like a cage with a door I hadn't dared to open. He'd been quieter since that night in the kitchen, when I'd stared him down, but his silence wasn't peace. It was a storm brewing. I kept up my routine, shifts at the diner, smiles for customers, and nights adding to my notebook. September 10th. "You're not worth the hassle, Lena." September 12th. "I'm the only one who'll ever want you." Each entry was a weight, grounding me, reminding me why I was doing this. I recorded his rants when I could, my burner phone, hidden in a pocket or under a dish towel. I emailed the files to my secret account, deleted them from the phone, and hid it in a new spot each time behind books, in a shoebox. Anywhere he wouldn't look. Sarah checked in daily now, her texts. To the burner phone, short but steady. "You okay? Any updates?" I'd reply with a quick, "I'm good," or "working on it." But I didn't tell her how my hands shook when I added to the folder Tara had given me. It was thicker now, stuffed with printed photos, text screenshots, and a timeline I'd typed up at the library, July 15th, first bruise, wrist. August 3rd, shoved against wall, no mark. September 5th, verbal threat, recorded. I'd also started saving voicemails Derek left when he was drunk, his voice slurring through my phone's speaker. "You're nothing, Lena. Don't forget that." I saved them all, labeled by date, each one a brick in the wall I was building. 1. Evening, I met Sarah at a coffee shop outside Millwood, a place with mismatched chairs and a barista who didn't know our names. She slid a small recorder across the table, the kind nurses use for patient notes. "It's better than your phone," she said. "Clear audio, no notifications to give you away." I turned it over in my hands, its weight solid like a tool. "For something bigger than me." "Thanks," I said, my voice catching. She leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. "You're close, Lena, but you need to be ready for him to push back. Guys like Derek don't let go easy." I nodded, but my stomach twisted. I thought about what Derek might do if he found out, scream, break something, or worse. I'd seen his temper flare over a lost remote. What would he do if he knew I was planning to leave? "I'm working on it," I said, tucking the recorder into my bag. Sarah didn't push, just paid for our coffees and hugged me before we left. Her arms felt like an anchor, keeping me from drifting too far into fear. Back home, I tested the recorder, whispering, "This is Lena." September 14th. "I'm doing this for me." The red light blinked, steady, like it was listening. I hid it in a drawer with old takeout menus, then added to my notebook. Derek came home late, his boots loud on the floor. He didn't speak, just grabbed a beer and turned on the TV. I stayed. In the kitchen, washing dishes I'd already cleaned. The recorder's weight in my mind like a secret weapon. The next day, I drove to the library again, this time to research shelters and legal aid. The computer screen glowed with options, but each one felt like a leap I wasn't ready for. I printed a list of local resources, folded it small, and tucked it into my wallet. On the way home, I stopped at a gas station and added $20 to my coffee. Savings. It was up to $420 now, enough for a month's rent in Crestview, maybe a bus ticket if I needed to go farther. I didn't know where farther was, but the idea of it kept me moving. That night, Derek was in a mood, pacing the living room, his hands flexing like he was itching to break something. "Work's screwing me over," he said, not looking at me. "And you're just sitting there, doing nothing." I kept my eyes on my book, a library copy of some mystery I wasn't reading. "I'm listening," I said, my voice calm. He snorted, kicked the coffee table, and the mug I'd left there wobbled but didn't fall. I recorded it, the recorder hidden in my hoodie pocket, catching his curses and the table's creak. I saved the file later, labeled it September 15, and emailed it away. The folder was my lifeline now, a proof I existed beyond Derek's words. I started carrying it with me, hidden in a backpack I kept in my car's trunk. I'd added more, a hospital receipt from last year when I'd gone for a sprained wrist. A note from my boss at the diner saying I'd missed shifts for personal reasons. Each piece was a stitch, sewing together a story I hadn't dared tell out loud. One morning I called Tara, the lawyer Sarah knew, from the library's payphone. "I'm not ready to file," I said, "but I want to know what's next." Her voice was warm, professional. "You're smart to prepare," she said. "Keep documenting. If you can, get a witness to corroborate. And find a safe place to stay." I told her about Crestview, and she paused like she was smiling. "Good, that's a start. When you're ready, we'll file together." I hung up, my heart racing. Not from fear, but from the shape of a future I could almost touch. Back at the apartment, I packed Maura a toothbrush, socks, a photo of me and Mom from when I was 10, her arm around me, both of us laughing. I hid the duffel deeper under the bed, behind a box of old magazines. Derek didn't notice, but he was watching closer now. "You're always gone," he said one night, his eyes sharp. "Where are you sneaking off to?" I shrugged, stirring. "Soup on the stove. Just work," I said. He didn't buy it, but he didn't push. "Not yet." Sarah texted the burner phone. "Tara says you're building a strong case. Proud of you." I read it in the bathroom, the door locked, the shower running to mask any sound. I typed back, "Thanks. Getting there." I didn't tell her how I'd started dreaming of Derek finding the folder, his hands tearing it apart, his voice drowning mine. I didn't tell her how I checked the deadbolt twice every night, even when he was home. One evening I drove to Crestview again, this time to meet the landlord, a gruff older man named Carl. He handed me a second key and said, "No trouble, all right?" I nodded, thanked him, and walked through the studio alone. I set up the kettle, plugged it in, and boiled water just to hear the hum. I sat on the mattress, the blanket draped over my shoulders, and wrote in my notebook, September 18th, "This is mine. He can't take it." I left the box there, a piece of me already living in this new life. Back in Millwood, Derek came home drunk, his voice loud, his hands sloppy. "You think you're so smart," he said, leaning into my space. I didn't flinch, just held the recorder in my pocket, its red light blinking through the fabric. "I'm just trying to sleep," I said, turning away. He grabbed my arm, harder this time, and I pulled back, my heart pounding. "Don't touch me," I said, louder than I meant.
He laughed, let go, and stumbled to the couch.
I recorded it all, saved it, hid the recorder. That night I slept with the burner phone under my pillow, Sarah's number on speed dial. I whispered to the dark, "You're not his story anymore." It was small, but it was enough to keep going. The air in the Millwood apartment was thick, like it was holding its breath. It was a Thursday in late September, and I stood in the kitchen, chopping carrots for a soup I didn't plan to eat. My hands moved steady, but my heart was a drumbeat, loud and uneven. The recorder Sarah gave me was tucked in my hoodie pocket, its weight a quiet reassurance. My notebook, now dog-eared and heavy with truth, was hidden in my backpack in the car. The Crestview studio waited 30 miles away, a lifeline I hadn't yet grabbed. Derek's boots were by the door, a reminder he'd be back soon. I glanced at the clock. 6:15 p.m. whispered to myself, "Just keep going, Lena." The past week had been a tightrope walk. Derek's mood swung harder now, like he sensed the ground shifting under him. He'd caught me texting on the burner phone 2 nights ago, but I'd said it was a coworker's number for a shift swap.
He didn't buy it, his eyes narrowing like he was piecing together a puzzle.
I'd added it to the notebook, September 20th. "Who are you texting, Lena? Don't play me." I recorded his voice, sharp and accusing, and emailed it to my burner account before he could check my phone. The folder in my car's trunk was bursting now. Photos, texts, hospital receipts, a timeline that read like a map of my survival. I'd even added a letter I wrote to myself, tucked in the back. "You're not his. You're Lena Marie and you're..." Enough. Sarah had been my rock, texting the burner phone daily, meeting me at the library or her place to check in. She'd brought Tara, the layer, to our last coffee shop meetup, and Tara had walked me through the restraining order process. "You've got enough for a judge to listen," she said, flipping through my folder. "But you need to be safe. When you file, he'll know." I nodded, my throat tight. Filing meant burning the bridge I was still standing on. I wasn't ready, but I was close. I'd moved more to Crestview towels, a lamp, a cheap coffee maker. Each trip felt like stealing pieces of myself back. I'd spent an hour there yesterday, sitting on the mattress, the kettle humming, writing in my notebook, September 22nd, "This place is mine. I'm not invisible here." I'd left a photo of me and Mom on the counter, a reminder of who I'd been. Before Derek's words carved me down. The studio wasn't much, but it was a seed, and I was watering it with every secret step. Tonight, though, the air felt wrong. Derek had been at the bar after work, his text slurred and angry. "Why's the place a mess? You're useless." I'd ignored them, kept the recorder ready, and locked the bedroom door when I slept. My coffee can savings were up to $500, hidden in a new spot inside an old purse in the closet. The burner phone was in my sock drawer, Sarah's number on speed dial. I was ready, or as ready as I'd ever be. The front door slammed, and my knife paused mid-chop. Derek stumbled in, his face flushed, a bottle of Jack in his hand. "You think I don't see you?" he shouted, his voice slicing through the quiet. I set the knife down, slow, my hand brushing the recorder in my pocket. "See what?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He stepped closer, his boots heavy, his breath sour. "You're sneaking around, Lena. Don't lie to me." My heart pounded. But I didn't look away. "I'm right here," I said, my eyes locked on his.
He laughed, bitter, and slammed the bottle on the counter, making the carrots jump.
"You're playing games," he said, his finger jabbing the air. "I know you're up to something." I took a breath, felt the recorder's weight, and said, "I'm done pretending this is normal, Derek." His face twisted, like I'd slapped him. "Done?" he mocked, stepping into my space. "You don't get to be done. You're nothing without me." I didn't flinch, even as my pulse raced. I pulled the recorder out, held it up, its red light blinking. "Say that again," I said, my voice steady. His eyes widened, darting to the device, then back to me. "You're recording me?" he roared, reaching for it. I stepped back, my back hitting the fridge. "Don't touch me," I said, louder now. He froze, his hand hovering, his chest heaving. "You're bluffing,"
he said, but his voice cracked, like he wasn't sure.
I didn't blink. "Try me," I replied, my grip tight on the recorder. For a moment we stood there, the kitchen humming with tension, the TV droning in the background. Then he laughed, cold and sharp, and backed off. "You're pathetic," he muttered, grabbing the bottle and storming to the living room. The recliner creaked as he sank into it, the TV volume spiking. I exhaled, shaky but alive. My hands trembled as I stopped the recording, saved it, and slipped the recorder back into my pocket. I texted Sarah on the burner phone. It's happening. I need to move. Her reply was instant. I'm ready. Come to my place. I didn't answer yet. I needed to breathe, to think. I finished chopping the carrots, my hands moving on autopilot, the knife's rhythm grounding me. The soup simmered, but I wasn't staying for dinner. I slipped into the bedroom, locked the door, and pulled the duffel from under the bed. I added my notebook, the photo of Mom, a pair of sneakers. My backpack was in the car, the folder safe. In the trunk, I checked the coffee can. $500, still there. I hid the burner phone in my bra, its plastic cool against my skin. Derek's snores started in the living room, loud and uneven. I opened the bedroom door, quiet, and crept to the front door. My hand was on the knob when he stirred, his voice slurring. Where you going? I froze, my heart in my throat. Bathroom, I said, not turning. He grunted, settled back, and I slipped out, the door clicking softly behind me. The night air hit my face, sharp and clean, as I jogged to my car. I drove to Sarah's, my hands tight on the wheel, the folder in the trunk. Heavier than ever. She was waiting on her porch, her face pale but calm. You did it, she said, pulling me into a hug. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Her apartment was warm, the plants casting soft shadows under the lamp. She set me up on the couch with a blanket and tea, then sat across from me. What's next? She asked. I pulled out the burner phone, opened my email, and showed her the recording from tonight.
This, I said, and the folder. I'm filing soon.
She nodded, her eyes proud. You're almost free, Lena. I didn't sleep much, just lay on the couch, the recorder in my hand, the folder's weight in my mind. I thought of Mom. Her eyes avoiding my wrist at dinner, her voice saying, He's a good guy, Lena, don't make trouble. I thought of Derek, his laugh when he saw the recorder, his words cutting deeper than his hands. I thought of Crestview, the studio waiting. A life I could build. I opened my notebook, wrote, September 24th, I stood up.
He didn't win. The next morning, Sarah drove me to Crestview.
We unloaded my duffel, the box of essentials, and a bag of groceries she'd packed. The studio felt bigger now, like it was breathing with me. I set the kettle on, plugged in the lamp, and hung the photo of Mom on the fridge with a magnet. Sarah hugged me before she left. You call me anytime, she said. I nodded, alone now. The deadbolt clicked, the silence my own. I sat on the mattress, the recorder in my lap, and played tonight's file. Derek's voice filled the room, angry, mocking, but smaller here. Like he couldn't reach me. I saved it, emailed it, and wrote in my notebook, This is my voice. He can't take it. I whispered to the empty room, You're not his story, Lena. You're yours. It wasn't loud, but it was true, and it carried me through the night. The Crestview studio was starting to feel like mine, even if it was still mostly bare. It was early October, a week after I'd left Millwood for good, and a single window let in a cool, gray light that made the linoleum floor look softer. I'd added a few touches: a second-hand rug, a thrift store lamp, a mug with a chipped handle for my morning tea. The photo of me and Mom sat on the counter, her smile frozen in a time before I knew what fear felt like. The bruise on my wrist was gone now, but I could still trace its shape in my mind like a scar no one else could. See. I sat on the mattress, my notebook open, and wrote, October 2nd, I'm here, I'm breathing. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me grounded. Sarah had helped me move the last of my things, 2 duffel bags, a box of kitchen stuff, and the folder that held my truth. The folder was locked in a metal box under the bed now, next to the coffee can with $520 in crumpled bills. I'd kept the recorder Sarah gave me in my pocket, a habit I couldn't shake even though Derek's voice no longer echoed through my walls. The burner phone buzzed daily with her texts. You okay? Need groceries? I'd reply with a quick I'm good or a thanks, I'm set, but the truth was, I was still learning what good felt like without looking over my shoulder that morning. I drove to the Crestview courthouse, a small brick building with a flag flapping in the wind. Sarah met me there, her car parked crooked in the lot. She hugged me tight, her nurse's scrub smelling faintly of antiseptic. You ready? She asked, eyeing the folder in my hands. I nodded, my throat tight. Filing the restraining order. Felt like shouting into a void, but I'd come too far to stay quiet. We walked inside, the clerk's desk lit by a flickering fluorescent bulb. I handed over the folder photos, texts, recordings, my timeline, all stapled and tabbed like a project I'd spent months perfecting. I'm filing for a protective order, I said, my voice steady. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, stamped the forms and said, "Hearings in 2 weeks. Stay safe." I nodded, the weight of her words settling like dust. Back. At the studio, I called Tara, the lawyer, on the burner phone. "It's done," I said. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for me. "Good, Lena, you've got a strong case. I'll be there for the hearing." I thanked her, hung up, and sat on the rug, staring at the folder's metal box. It wasn't just paper, it was my voice, louder than Derek's shouts, stronger than his hands. I opened my notebook, wrote, October 3rd, I spoke. They heard me. A few days later, Sarah forwarded me an email from a reporter named Claire, a friend of a friend who'd heard about my case through Tara. "I want to tell your story," Claire wrote. "It could help others." I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Sharing meant exposing everything, my bruises, my silence, my fear. But it also meant breaking the static that had trapped me for years. I replied, "I'm ready, use everything." I sent her the folder's contents. Zipped and encrypted, photos, recordings, texts, the timeline. I added a note, "Don't let it stay quiet." Claire called the next day. Her voice sharp but kind, like she'd seen too much but still believed in truth. "This is powerful, Lena," she said. "I'm writing it up, but it'll be big. You sure?" I swallowed, my heart racing. "I'm sure," I said. She promised to keep my name out if I wanted, but I said, "Use it. I'm not hiding." We talked for an hour, her questions gentle but precise, like she was stitching together a quilt from my scattered pieces. When we hung up, I felt lighter, like I'd handed her a weight I'd been carrying alone. The article went live a week later. On a Monday morning, pinned to the top of Claire's news site, breaking the static, one woman's fight to be seen. I read it on my laptop, the words blurring as my eyes traced my own story. Lena, 28, from Millwood, Ohio, documented months of abuse. Her evidence, meticulously gathered, paints a chilling picture. It included a clip of Derek's voice, the one from September 24th. "You're nothing without me." My hands shook. Not from fear, but from seeing my truth in black and white, out there for the world to read. My burner phone buzzed with messages. Sarah, Tara, co-workers from the diner, even a stranger named Emily who wrote, "I saw the article. I've been there, thank you." Then came one that stopped me cold, from a woman named Jenna. "I dated Derek 5 years ago. He did the same to me. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my breath shallow. I wasn't alone. I typed back, "Yes, call." Her number came through an hour later and we talked, her voice trembling but strong, like mine. "He isolated me, took my money, left bruises," she said. No one believed me. I told her about the folder, the article, the restraining order. "We're louder together," I said. She agreed to meet, to share her story, to add her voice to mine. Derek saw the article, of course. That night, he posted a video on social media, his face red, his eyes wild. "Lena's lying," he said, his voice cracking. "She's out to ruin me. I loved her, and this is how she repays me?" I watched it on my laptop, the studio's quiet wrapping around me like a shield. His words didn't cut like they used to. They were just noise, desperate and hollow. I didn't respond, but I posted a photo on my own account, a close-up of my wrist from August. The bruise stark against my skin. No caption, just the truth. Comments flooded in, some angry, some supportive, but one stood out. "You didn't break." The silence. "You survived it." It was shared hundreds of times by morning. The next day, Claire called again. "The article's gaining traction," she said. "People are talking, Lena. Other women are coming forward." My stomach flipped. "How many?" I asked. "3 so far, besides Jenna," she said. "Same pattern, same guy." I closed my eyes, picturing them women like me, carrying the same weight, the same fear. "Connect us," I said. She promised to set up a call, a group to share our stories, to make sure Derek's name didn't slip through the cracks. that night. I sat on the rug, the lamp casting a warm glow over my notebook. I wrote, October 10th, I'm not alone.
We're
not invisible. I played Jenna's voicemail again, her words soft but steady. I'm ready to fight with you. I saved it, added it to the folder, now digital, since to a secure drive Claire had set up. The studio's silence wasn't heavy. Anymore, it was space, room for me to breathe, to grow. I called Mom, the first time since I'd left. Her voice was cautious, like she was waiting for bad news. Lena, she said, what's this article everyone's talking about? I took a breath, my fingers tight on the burner phone. It's me, Mom, it's what Derek did. She was quiet too long. He wasn't perfect, but airing this out. It's messy. My chest ached, but I didn't cry. It's not about mess, I said. It's about truth. She didn't reply, just sighed, and I hung up. The ache settling deeper. I lit a candle, a small one I'd bought at the thrift store, and set it by the window. The flame flickered, casting light into the dark. I whispered to it, You're not his, Lena. You're yours. The words felt like a vow. One I was finally starting to believe. The Crestview courthouse steps felt solid under my feet, colder now in mid-October's chill. I stood outside, the wind tugging at my scarf, my hands empty except for a small, unlit candle Jenna had given me last week. It was a plain white taper, the kind you'd find in a dollar store. But she'd pressed it into my palm with a quiet, for when you're ready to shine. I hadn't lit it yet, but I carried it everywhere. A reminder of the light I was starting to see in myself. The folder that once held my truth photos, recordings, texts was gone. Its contents now in the hands of judges, lawyers, and Claire, the reporter who turned my whisper into a shout. I was here today for the restraining order hearing. But it felt bigger, like I was closing a door and opening another all at once. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with scuffed wooden benches and a clock ticking too loud. Sarah sat beside me, her hand warm on my arm. Her nurse's scrubs swapped for a blazer she'd borrowed from Tara. Jenna was there too. In the row behind, her eyes steady, her own folder of evidence submitted to support my case. We'd met twice since the article broke, along with two other women, Emily and Tara's friend, Mara, who'd faced Derek's shadow years before me. We called ourselves the Static Breakers, a name Claire had suggested half-joking, but it stuck. We weren't just survivors, we were a chorus. Our voices weaving together to make sure no one could ignore us. The judge, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and glasses perched low, called my name. Lena Marie Dawson. I stood, my knees steady, and walked to the stand. Derek was there, across the room, in a cheap suit that didn't fit right, his lawyer whispering in his ear.
He didn't look at me, just stared at the floor, his jaw
tight. I swore to tell the truth, my voice clear, and Tara led me through the questions. Can you describe the incidents? She asked. I told them dates, bruises, his words, the recordings. I didn't cry, didn't shake. I'd cried enough. In Millwood's shadows. Here, I was light, burning steady. Derek's lawyer tried to twist it, saying I was vindictive, that I'd fabricated evidence to ruin a good man. I didn't flinch. Tara played the recordings, Derek's voice filling the room. You're nothing, Lena. The judge's pen paused, her eyes narrowing. She flipped through my folder, now a court exhibit, and asked Derek to speak. He mumbled about stress, about loving me, about how I'd changed. It sounded rehearsed, like a script he'd never believed. The judge didn't blink, just nodded and said, Order granted. Permanent protective order, effective immediately. Defendant to maintain 500 feet distance and surrender any firearms. I exhaled, the air leaving me like a weight I'd carried too long. Sarah squeezed my hand, Jenna gave a small nod, and we left the courtroom, the clock's tick fading behind. U.S. Outside, the sky was a pale blue, the kind that promises winter but holds off just a little longer. I stood on the steps, the candle in my pocket, and felt something new, not relief. Not victory, but peace, quiet and small, like a seed taking root. That night, back in the studio, I lit the candle for the first time. It sat on the windowsill, its flame dancing against the glass, casting a soft glow into the dark. I opened my notebook, now more journal than evidence log, and wrote, October 5th, 10th, I'm free. Not just from him, from the silence. The static breakers. Met the next day at a community center Claire had booked. It was a plain room with folding chairs and a coffee pot that smelled burnt, but it was ours. Emily shared her story, her voice breaking but strong. Mara showed us a letter she'd written to her younger self, forgiving her for staying. Jenna passed around photos of her new apartment, a place she'd claimed like I had. I told them about the hearing, the judge's nod, the candle. We didn't cry much, just listened. Our silences full of understanding. Claire joined us, her laptop open, showing a draft of her follow-up article, The Static Breakers, Women Who Refuse to Be Silenced. It named us, with our permission, and quoted our words. Lena says, I didn't scream. I documented, and that was louder. I read it, my chest tight with pride, not shame. The article went live the next morning, and my burner phone buzzed with messages, strangers, friends, a coworker who'd seen me hide bruises at the diner. One was from a woman named Carla. I'm filing because of you. Thank you. I saved it, added it to my journal, a new kind of proof. Derek tried one last move, posting another video, this time crying, saying he'd lost everything because of lies. It didn't gain traction. The comments called him out, shared Claire's article, tagged the static breakers. I posted nothing, just lived, my studio filling with small things, a plant from Sarah, a book from Jenna, a life I was building. I called Mom again, hoping for something different. You didn't have to make it public, she said, her voice thin. I had to make it real, I replied, and hung up, the ache softer now, like a bruise fading. A week later, Tara called with news. The day was reviewing my case for charges, thanks to the article and Jenna's evidence. It's not a sure thing, she said, but it's progress. I nodded, alone in the studio, the candle burning low. Progress wasn't justice, but it was enough for now. I started working again, a part-time job at a Crestview cafe, pouring coffee and smiling without faking it. I saved every tip, adding to my coffee can, now a jar on the counter. 600 and growing. The static breakers grew too. Meeting weekly, sharing resources, helping others start their folders. Claire connected us with a local shelter, and we volunteered. Teaching women how to document, how to whisper their truth until it roared. I stood in front of a small group one night, my voice steady, telling them, you're not invisible. Your story matters. I saw myself in their eyes, the me from Millwood, and I handed them blank notebooks. A gift from the group. One evening I walked home from the cafe, the air crisp, the stars sharp above Crestview. I passed the courthouse, its steps empty now, and stopped, the candle still in my pocket. I didn't need to light it tonight. The light was in me, steady, not flickering. I reached my studio, unlocked the deadbolt, and stepped inside, the quiet welcoming, not heavy. I set the kettle on, the hum familiar, and sat on the rug, my journal open. I wrote, October 22nd, I'm not just surviving. I'm living, the candle. Stayed by the window, a beacon for anyone out there, still in the static, waiting for their voice to break through. I whispered to it, you're not alone, we're here. It wasn't loud, but it was true, and truth, I'd learned, didn't need to scream to be heard. So, that's my story, or at least where it's at now. I'm Lena from Millwood, Ohio, finding my way in Crestview, one step at a time. Have you ever found your voice when you thought it was gone? Drop a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts, maybe what time it is where you are, or what kept you going. If this story moved you, give it a like or hit that subscribe button. It helps this little channel grow. And it means the world to know you're out there, listening, maybe finding your own light too.